The night started normal. Mason was 3 months old. We were at my parents' house because they insisted they hadn't bonded enough and wanted a family dinner. They poured rosé like it was a holiday, like I should feel privileged they were even giving my baby attention. My brother Alex had just won some local news dance feature video online, and the entire house was decorated like he had cured cancer. Glitter balloons, fancy cheese board. My mother kept calling him our star. My father kept topping his glass before it even emptied. I kept Mason against my chest because something in his breathing felt slightly off. Faster, tighter, like each inhale cost more than the one before it. I mentioned it at the table, quietly, cautiously. I said, "I think Mason's struggling to breathe a little. I need to take him home soon after dinner. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." My mother rolled her eyes so hard it looked like her face was allergic to inconvenience. "He's a baby. Babies cry. Babies whine. You panic over everything." She sipped her wine, shook her head dramatically, and waved her hand like she wanted me to disappear from the conversation so she could return to praising Alex's Instagram comments. Dad lifted his phone and said, "See? Alex hit 24K likes. That's real pressure. Your baby fussing isn't an emergency." Mason's face turned slightly red near his temple. He whimpered in a strained way that didn't sound like normal discomfort. It sounded like pain. He curled his tiny hands like he was fighting something inside his own chest. "I need to leave," I said, already standing. "Right now." Dad blocked my path with his arm out like a barrier. "You're not taking away the night because you want attention." His voice dropped low, the same tone he always used when he wanted to control me with mock calmness. "Sit down. You make everything miserable." My brother laughed under his breath. "She acts like that baby is a nuclear device about to explode." I walked toward the hallway anyway, holding Mason against me. Mason's body was warmer now, too warm. His breathing shallow. He cried again, weaker. Mom snapped, "Oh my God, will you stop? Drink a glass of wine and sit down. Alex hasn't even opened his gift yet. You can deal with your melodrama after dessert." I said, "I'm not waiting." My voice was shaking, but I kept moving. "Mason is in distress." Dad grabbed the back of the rocking chair near the hall and shoved it in front of me. "You leave now and don't expect us to take you seriously ever again. We will not reward this manipulation." My heart slammed against my ribs. Mason let out a small, sharp cry like his throat was closing. I turned toward the kitchen with my free arm, reaching for my keys on the counter. But they weren't there. My mother had moved them. She took a long, slow sip of wine, then said without looking at me, "You lose everything because you panic." I cleaned the counter. "Maybe look better next time." She had them. She wanted control. She always did. I held Mason closer, feeling his body tense like he was trapped inside something I couldn't see. "Give me my keys," I said quietly. She didn't even turn toward me. "If you ruin Alex's night again, don't bother coming back here." My brother raised his glass. "Cheers to boundaries. Finally." They laughed. They clinked glasses. Mason's breathing got faster. His tiny lips quivered like he was running out of strength to cry. My panic started to convert into something completely dead inside, because this wasn't just favoritism or dysfunctional parenting. This was them choosing celebration over medical urgency like it meant nothing. I stepped past the rocker, shoved it just enough with my hip while holding Mason, and went straight to the front door barefoot. I didn't wait. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Dad yelled from behind me, "You walk out like this, don't expect us to chase your hysteria anymore." Mom shouted, "We are done with your drama." Alex yelled, "This is why nobody wants to deal with you." I didn't even close the door behind me. I just ran with Mason in my arms down the walkway barefoot, onto the sidewalk, holding him against me like he was the only thing in the world that mattered, because he was. I called an Uber, shaking so hard I could barely tap the app. My mother texted me in the middle of ordering it. "If you end up paying some massive bill, don't come crying to us." I turned my phone face down inside the diaper bag. Mason's whimpering turned into short, rapid breaths. His eyes half closed, not with sleep, but weakness. I held his cheek with my free hand the entire ride, whispering his name over and over, trying to keep him awake, begging him quietly not to check out on me. I sat in the ER waiting room with my baby's head against my shoulder while triage nurses rushed him to oxygen support. Every minute waiting on lab results felt like the room compressed around my lungs. They said it was respiratory distress from a sudden infection spike. They needed immediate intervention. While doctors stabilized him, I stood in the silent hallway just outside, barefoot, hair messy, shirt damp from tears and sweat. And I realized something that didn't feel emotional at all. It felt cold, precise, final. They didn't let him suffer because they didn't understand danger. They let him suffer because it didn't involve their favorite child. I didn't text them the outcome. I didn't call. I didn't update. They didn't deserve a single detail. Mason stabilized hours later. In that moment, standing under hospital fluorescent lights, mascara smudged down my cheeks, arms numb from holding fear for hours. I understood I wasn't just raising a baby alone. I was surviving, parenthood alone, and the moment they made me choose between my child's life and their wine night, I chose him. That night became the exact origin of the version of me who no longer begged to be valued. When Mason opened his eyes again and squeezed my finger, I promised myself silently, never again would they get near him, not physically, not emotionally, not ever. I didn't go back to their house after that night, not once. I didn't text them, I didn't explain, I didn't argue, I didn't give them a scene they could twist. I just disappeared from their structure silently, and silence bothered narcissistic people more than screaming ever could. For the first 2 weeks, they didn't care. They didn't notice. They assumed I was in punishment mode and would crawl back eventually. I saw mom's posts online, wine nights, brunch pictures, inside jokes with Alex, captions about protecting your peace from dramatic energies. They weren't talking to me. They were mocking the idea I existed. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on a hospital cot half the nights because Mason needed 2 follow-up rounds, steroids, and breathing support. The nurses printed educational charts for me. Doctors explained everything slowly until I memorized it enough to catch small changes myself. I learned where to press his chest gently when he wheezed. I learned how to hold his head upright while he slept. I learned how to be his entire universe because I no longer believed anyone else ever would. One night at 2:30 a.m., I looked down at him sleeping with oxygen support next to his pillow, and I thought about every single moment in childhood where I excused what my parents did to me as normal. I remembered sitting outside choir practice waiting for them to pick me up, and they never came because Alex had soccer and they forgot. I remembered Mom saying, "You don't need anyone to celebrate you. You're not that special." I remembered Dad telling me not to ask for help because girls like you don't deserve easy roads. Everything connected all at once. They weren't just cruel that night at the house. They had been training me to accept being disposable since I was younger than Mason was now. I decided quietly I would never let Mason feel disposable. Not once. Not even in passing. 3 weeks later, when Mason was stable enough to go home full-time, my parents suddenly texted asking, "Why aren't you calling?" Like the entire world was backward. They heard from someone in the neighborhood that I had been at the hospital. They didn't even ask why. They didn't ask if Mason was okay. They only asked why I didn't update them. I read the message. I closed it. They called after that, arguing that I was dramatic, that I was punishing them, that I was destroying the family bond over something small and temporary and misunderstood. I put my phone on silent and fed Mason his little bottle slowly, watching his tiny eyes trace the sunlight coming through the cheap blinds in my apartment. They sent voice notes after midnight, then paragraphs, then guilt, then rage, then victim statements, then silent treatment. And while that cycle spun, I slowly rebuilt myself in places they didn't know existed. I transferred to a different pediatric clinic closer to home for his follow-ups. I joined a support group for mothers of medically sensitive infants. I learned which foods to avoid, what to check twice, how to read his breathing even with my eyes closed. I found a remote job where I could work from home. Less pay, more time, safety over status. Every step I took was not revenge. It was separation. Clean, deliberate separation. I wasn't plotting some theatrical end to them. I wasn't imagining them ruined on the floor. They weren't worth the emotional oxygen. But there was a shift happening gradually inside me. A calm understanding that I was done giving them any power to claim they ever supported me or my child. One day soon, their world would require something from me. I didn't know when, I didn't know what, but I knew these people. I grew up with them. I knew eventually they would fall somewhere. Health, money, reputation, and they would call me expecting me to be the same desperate daughter who would cave because family. I wasn't that girl anymore. Weeks passed into months. Mason grew stronger. I learned how to live without fear of their reactions. I learned how to breathe without waiting for their approval. My silence hardened into a boundary so solid nothing could push through it. Then one afternoon, nearly a year later, my brother texted me out of nowhere. "Mom's sick, really sick. Dad can't manage it alone. Answer your phone. We need you." I stared at the notification pop up on the screen while Mason napped next to me. This was the moment life circled back, and for the first time in my life, my breath didn't shake. I didn't reply that day. I didn't reply the next day either. I didn't explain anything to Mason because he didn't need to carry any of their weight. He just needed to live in a house where love wasn't a conditional bargaining chip. Alex eventually stopped texting paragraphs and sent one short message on day 6. "Dad said if you don't help now, you'll regret it forever." I sat in the small city park while Mason played in the sandbox with 2 little kids he just met, laughing freely, no fear in his voice anymore. I read that sentence once, and then I deleted it. Regret was their language. I didn't speak it anymore. I closed the phone, put it inside my bag, and sat on the bench fully present for the first time in my life, actually noticing the world around me instead of monitoring it for danger. Mason looked up and waved. "Mom, look! I made a tunnel." His smile looked like independence. I stood and walked toward him slowly, like a person who had finally arrived in her own life. Weeks later, when the hospital mailed a generic notice asking each family member to update emergency contact information, I crossed their names out without a single hesitation and wrote one sentence under the box. No living family contacts. Not tragic, not dramatic, not emotional, just factual truth. And as I sealed that envelope and dropped it in the outgoing mail bin in the lobby, it hit me. I used to think revenge was payback, but this was something deeper. Revenge was them watching life continue perfectly fine without them, while they finally realized they were never the center of anything but their own delusions. I walked outside into warm sun, held Mason's hand, and we crossed the street toward the grocery store. Cars moved, people laughed. Life went on like they were never part of it, and they never would be again. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.